What is a cultural heritage site and what happens to a cultural heritage site? Tonight we feature a Philippine property located in Tokyo, Japan, that has been the subject of controversy for many years. Our guest, Atty. Catalino Generillo, will tell us leading towards its peaceful resolution. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Sir, what is this Tokyo property, to start us off?
Well, this Tokyo property is the official residence of Philippine ambassadors to Japan. This was acquired in 1944 by President Laurel during wartime. But the edifice was constructed way back in 1934 by the Yasuda family. Yasuda used to be a business tycoon in Japan. But,
yes, sir.
Yeah, okay.
Please
now, this property, after it was acquired by President Laurel, it became the official residence of Philippine ambassadors to Japan. Up to now, it is still the official residence. In fact, the newly appointed ambassador, Ambassador Lopez, resides in that place. Now, this property, after the war, was used by the American forces as office for female officers of the Americans. And then later on, it became a delegation of the government, and then later on converted as the official residence of the Philippine ambassadors to Japan.
So if you could just give us like a bullet list of why it is important to keep this property for the Philippine government?
Well, firstly, this is underscored by the fact that in March this year, the National Historical Commission declared that property as National Historical Landmark, meaning to say it is now entitled to the privilege of being conserved, preserved, and protected under Philippine law. In 2010, President Arroyo signed into law Republic Act 166, which is called the National Cultural Heritage Act of 2009. And by definition, under that law, the Fujimi property is considered as an important cultural property for the simple reason that it is more than 50 years old. Remember, I said earlier that it was constructed way back in 1934. And so, by presumption of law, it is an important cultural property and should be preserved, conserved, and protected.
If you could just give us an insight on why it was given up for bid. Why was the building supposedly going to be sold? What was going to happen to the building? Well,
during the time of President Arroyo, there was a plan to develop the property by constructing a 21-story condominium story in that site, and in the process, the official residence of the Philippine ambassador will be demolished to give way for that 21-story condominium. But then, at that time, Ambassador Xiazon, who was the ambassador to Tokyo, wrote a letter to Secretary Romulo expressing his views why such plan should not be pursued, because it will create a problem with respect to delineation of diplomatic immunity as well as security areas for the embassy and for the foreign service employees. For instance, under the plan to build a 21-story condominium, the official residence of the ambassador will be at the top of the building. And you can just imagine where do you delineate the diplomatic area which would entitle it to immunity, as well as with respect to delineation of security area. Okay, so because of that letter, in that letter of Ambassador Xiazon, he told Secretary Romulo perhaps the government should study carefully the plan. And therefore, in a way, Ambassador Xiazon was saying, please don't demolish the official residence of the Philippine ambassador. And he suggested a compromise option. But I would leave it to Ambassador Xiazon to explain what that compromise option is. But in the compromise option suggested by Ambassador Xiazon at the time, he was saying that let's maximize, of course, let's maximize the space of the site, but let us preserve the official residence of the ambassador. In fact, after that, the Philippine Ambassadors Foundation, headed by Jose Macario Laurel, and Ambassador Yushchenko wrote a letter to President Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo suggesting also to the plan to demolish the property.
Sir, sorry if I interrupt you. Moving on, do you think the law covering historical cultural heritage, which you mentioned earlier, likewise could cover other Philippine embassies?
Oh yes, especially if it has the same feature as the Fujimi property, meaning to say if it is more than 50 years old. For example, I think the embassy in Washington is owned by the Philippine government, and I believe it's also more than 50 years old. But if it is not more than 50 years old, then it is not entitled to the legal presumption that it is an important cultural property. And therefore, there is a need for a separate proceedings by which that property would have to be declared by the National Historical Commission as an important cultural property. Meaning to say, there will be a petition filed to declare that property as National Historical Landmark.
Well, sir, we all wish this issue will be solved as soon as possible, as it is very important to maintain our sort of cultural heritage, especially abroad. Thank you so much for sharing with us a successful resolution of it. Well, the anticipation of a successful this Philippine property in Tokyo. That was Attorney Catalino Generillo, crusader for a good cause and private practitioner. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.